So this is going to be a quick video about how to use Amodex ink and stain remover. This is a really popular stain remover. It's best known for removing Sharpie, but it works with all sorts of other stains: pencils, crayons, ballpoint pens, wine, oil, so on and so forth. Pretty easy to use, but it can be a little intimidating at first. Here's a quick video about how to use it. This is the Amodex right here, ink and stain remover. There's some instructions here. Do not wet fabric or skin before using. Test Amodex on inside seam or hidden area. I've tested this fabric before, so I'm not going to do it, but you should always test the fabric and see if it's sensitive to this stain remover. We'll need a brush. It says you could use your fingernail. I prefer a brush. And obviously, in this case, we'll be using the Sharpie to test. We could be making the stain with anything. You probably already made the stain, which is why you're watching the video. Here are the instructions in case you lost them. Test. Do not wet. For ink stains, place paper or towel beneath. Basically, you don't want the stain to get anyplace else, like the underside of the clothing if it's more than one layer. Shake the bottle well, apply, rub it in, rinse or launder. So we'll make our mark right here. Here's our reference mark. In the case of most stains, you want to get to it with the Amodex as quickly as possible. Once the Sharpie sets or something like this sets, it's going to be a real problem to get out, and it probably won't come out fully. If it's fresh like this and you rush to get the Amodex on here, you want to apply a healthy amount. Now we want to brush it in. This is going to take some time, and you may need to be careful with the fabric so that what you don't want to do is remove the stain, but then mess up the fabric in the meantime. Because what will happen is the brushing, it can harm the fabric. It could cause something to pill. There's a lot of things that could happen, and you want to be really careful. Apply a little bit more, so it's not really lathering as much as I wanted. Again, this is a larger than typical stain. You don't want to be cheap with the Amodex just because it does need pretty good coverage to do its job. Okay, so I've been brushing a bit and that line is a lot lighter, but I could still see it there. In this case, you want to go ahead and apply a little bit more of the Amodex. Again, it might feel wasteful, but if it's the difference between 10 cents worth of the stain remover versus a garment that costs probably a lot more than that, then you want to go ahead and use a generous amount. I switched over to a little bit stiffer brush. Any toothbrush really seems fine for me. They just say brush or your fingernail. I don't like using my fingernail. I tried it. It didn't work for me. I would find an old toothbrush or some sort of clothing type brush you could use. You really want to be making sure you have a nice lather and that you're not causing damage to the fabric and that you're not pulling up the color from the garment itself. Okay, I've done a fair bit of brushing. I see probably the line looks like it's mostly been removed. Maybe there's definitely some remnant of it left, but it's mostly removed. Again, this is a pretty worst case scenario is actually drawing a Sharpie line on it like that. More common, you would just do something like this, and we'll test that out as well. Okay, we'll stop there. And that was maybe what, 20-25 seconds of brushing. And now we're gonna rinse this out entirely. If this was a garment, you would go ahead and just put it in the washing machine. Okay, so I gave this piece of fabric a thorough washing and then let it dry. And here are the results. First of all, right here we have our worst case scenario line. You could see it is largely gone. It's not perfect, but it is largely gone. This high degree of lighting and this jersey makes it seem worse than I would say it normally is, or it actually is, because if this was a t-shirt and it wasn't in such harsh lighting and you were just wearing it, this line would be very hard to notice. In very direct light, we could definitely see it, but it did a really nice job versus that reference line, which is here. This kind of blends in, it's still there, but it's 90% removed, 95% removed. The Amodex worked pretty well. Again, that is something I would consider to be near worst case scenario. Here, those two little dots over here, that might be them there and there. Might be that. It's hard to tell because the Amodex did a really great job pulling them out. And that is, for me in my head, a more lifelike scenario of what would happen if you got a Sharpie, you dropped a Sharpie on your shirt or a jacket or something like that. You get a little dot or two, you'd rush off, you'd remove it, and it looks like this did a great job and it's basically gone. Regardless of the results or the fabric or anything like that, that is how you use the Amodex stain remover. Pretty simple. You want to get onto that stain as quickly as possible. Do not wet the fabric. Use this generally. Don't be afraid to reapply. Brush it in with a stiff but not so stiff toothbrush. Give it a good brush. Once you see the fabric starting to pill a little bit, which you could probably make out right on here, you want to start being really careful. Also, make sure before any of this, you're testing out a small patch, probably on the underside of a collar or something like that, maybe on the inside, to see if it's going to damage the fabric. But yeah, that's how you use Amodex ink and stain remover.